in quilting is when a decorative piece of fabric is attached on top of a larger piece of fabric. There are no limits to what you can applique once you know how to make a point or sew on a curve. This block and all the blocks you may encounter for this project will involve using an iron-on adhesive. The one we will use is a paper-backed adhesive called Wonder Under. Once the two pieces of fabric are adhered together, all you need to do is stitch around the edges of the top fabric. This will add durability to the quilt so it can be used and washed and loved longer. If you know the basics of using your sewing machine, you will succeed in this project. We will keep our applique simple by using a straight stitch. Thread will be provided and it should be a good match to the top fabric, so the stitching we will do will be camouflaged. In this video, we will demonstrate the sewing skills needed for the project. Some of these may be a review for you, even if you've never done applique before. We will test stitch, straight stitch, back stitch, turn on an angle, and adjust for a curve while sewing our top piece applique onto the base fabric. Let's get started. The first block we'll look at is the simplest to applique. The block is a series of columns. Our machine stitching secures the applique pieces and prevents any future fraying. Let's remember the basics. The first thing to do before ever working on an actual block is to test stitch. We're looking for a nice looking stitch length and proper tension. A test stitch also ensures that the machine is threaded correctly and is generally working properly. If there are any problems, fix them before working on the block. Remember to test stitch whenever you change thread. When you are ready to work on the columns block, begin your straight stitch on the edge of the base fabric. We are basically going to outline the applique with our straight stitch. Try to keep your stitching very close to the edge of the applique. Remember that the line of stitching is where any future fraying will stop. Keep your stitching slow and steady so you are always in control of where the needle will land on your fabric. Once you get to a corner, you will need to make an angled turn. In order to turn the corner, leave the needle in the down position. Stop stitching, lift the presser foot, and turn your fabric. Now lower the foot again and begin making a straight stitch line, again outlining the next side of the applique. Practicing this process will help you on future blocks. You will see that you can also navigate tight curves by working the presser foot and turning your fabric. For the column block, you only have to worry about the right angles, so you don't have to worry about the curves yet. In fact, you don't even have to backstitch on this block because the seams will be secured when we stitch the blocks together. The next block we will work on is the circle block. With this block, we will be using a backstitch at times, and we will also be sewing on a curve. But don't worry, it's not too bad. But first things first, make sure you complete your test stitch before you start outlining on your applique. As you can see, the applique pieces on this block do not all start on the edge of the block. So to get started, we will secure the seam by using a back stitch. This is simple when you make 2 or 3 stitches, then put your machine in reverse and go back over those stitches to the start of the seam, and then begin again. You should only need to backstitch on your applique pieces if the seam does not start on the edge of the block, or if you're ending the seam in a different spot than where you started it. As we stitch this block, you will need to guide the fabric on the curve in order to follow the edge of the applique. The curves on this block are gradual, so you can guide the fabric fairly easily by ever so slightly guiding to the right as the machine pulls the fabric forward. As you practice, you will get more comfortable at sewing around a curve. Don't worry, it's not a race. If you feel the machine has more control of the fabric than you do, slow down until you feel more comfortable. Remember to backstitch a couple of stitches at the end of your seam. The final block we will look at is the Keith Haring block. This block actually has 2 applique pieces on it, one on top of the other. You will need to outline both pieces to secure them, but you do not have to backstitch because you will end your seam in the same place where you start, so you can secure the seam just by stitching over your first few stitches and then trimming the threads. This applique has a lot of curves. To negotiate all of these curves, you will need to guide your fabric and at times work the presser foot, similar to turning an angle. Even experienced sewers need to take their time on this one to keep the seam on the edge of the applique. Take your time.